you can get to 500,000 ARR pretty simply by just following this game plan. This is Bill Rice with Bill Rice Strategies, and I'm doing a little bit of a different format today. Tell me what you think of it. For a couple different reasons. One, this is just something that kind of sparked out of some conversations that I was having with some folks about entrepreneurship and actually starting up a business from scratch. And I just went to my notebook and I kind of like, hey, if I was going to start all over, which I've done a couple of different times, how would I go about doing it specifically right now? There are a lot of different sort of things that are available to us that were different at different times. And so the topic of today's video is how to make your first 500,000 in annual recurring revenue. And your natural first place to start here might just go to your calculator and take your 500,000 that you want to make for the year, 1,666 and change every single month in order to hit that annual run rate. And then from there, you would back into like, oh, what's the average cost per sale and revenue and those sorts of things. But I think this is kind of the wrong approach. I love models and numbers as well as anybody else and kind of having an understanding of that. But most times when we're starting a business, if you're a founder or even in the early stages of a startup, you have less clarity around the product and the service delivery, the prices that you will charge, and those sorts of things. And so in my mind and my experience when I have started businesses over the years, I think it's more important to get the marketing engine started. This may sound counterintuitive, and a lot of startups don't think like this, but I think it's important to get the marketing engine started, which we'll kind of go through here, because particularly as a startup, you're introducing into the marketplace a new concept, and you're having to convince people that you have something unique, that you can, change something significant within their business. There has to be this compelling value proposition. Well, in order to really refine that, I think it's helpful to actually start on the marketing and get a lot of those messaging tested in the marketplace. Even before that, to start building up the channels and the audience that you're going to need in order to really get a good, significant test of the things that you're working on as far as messaging. So anyway, long story short, this is the quick and dirty on how I would start and very quickly get to, and I've demonstrated this before, very quickly get to that 500,000 ARR mark. And that's not arbitrary. That's a reasonably, it's a number that I've hit consistently over and over again. It's also the number at which point, particularly, if that's revenue, you kept your expenses tight, that you become interesting to venture capital, to angel investors, and those sorts of things. So let's get to the list. First and foremost, just take inventory of what you have, the skills that you bring, what makes you unique, your contrarian view on the marketplace or how you're going to serve the market. What is that? And then create a positioning statement around that concept and that inventory. And I think it's even better. I did a whole video on this. If you take that positioning statement and you blow it out into a true manifesto, and inside of that manifesto is going to be a couple different things beyond just the positioning statement, telling people, what you do and how you do it and how you do it better. In a manifesto, you start to kind of create a cultural document that talks about, what was the original purpose and vision, what are our core values, and then ultimately, how do we deliver different? What is our unique positioning? You can pull all that together into a manifesto and then make it attractive and compelling for somebody to read through it, ideally internally, so that as more and more people come on board, everybody's rowing in the same direction, but at the same time, it can also be market-facing. Some great examples of this is Zappos created something like this years and years ago. I worked for Quicken Loans, now Rocket Mortgage, and they had an isms book that they published every single year that was a compilation of not just those core values and that manifesto, but also real examples of how that sort of played out, or examples of that in action throughout the year. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, and I kind of sort of categorized it here, is we want to create a body of work. And why I say that is because as you're going out into the market, the worst thing that can happen is that you have one thing that somebody trips across, but there's nowhere to go deeper, right? So we know in marketing, in order to create a transaction, it usually takes 7+ interactions or impressions. And if you don't have a body of work so that they can bounce around and they can go down that rabbit trail, get lost in the rabbit holes, and binge on your content and your philosophy and information about your product and service, even if it is an MVP, there's just not going to be enough impressions there to turn them into a customer, or even to get them to subscribe and become part of your audience, so that when you do have that MVP ready, that they're ready to buy. So in order to create that body of work, I always think it begins with writing, ultimately. So big fan of video. Obviously, I'm doing a video now, but writing is kind of the starting point. You can see here, I wrote some ideas down. I think it's important to write and rewrite and create those ideas, publish them, text versions, ideally at first on platforms that already have audiences, places like LinkedIn. You can do articles, you can do posts. Medium is another great solution. Again, there's an audience there depending on what your positioning is and who your audience is. Reddit actually is not a bad place to start vetting some of your ideas. So encourage you to do, first and foremost, to start doing some writing. Then from there, you're going to want to create something that's more kind of visually appealing, right? So that's where videos come in. Big fan of YouTube channels. One of the things that I think is kind of interesting about YouTube is a lot of people think, oh, there's so much content on YouTube, there's so many creators, like that kind of gig is up. But I've found, especially when I want to go deep into something, there's actually not a lot of content, and there's certainly not a lot of ongoing content. So if you, again, wanted to binge on a particular content, there's probably only 1 or 2 creators in that space. So I think YouTube has a lot of opportunity because there isn't a lot of content, and it's relatively easy with fresh content on a particular subject to be into or get entry into that audience, even easier than straight writing and SEO on your own site and that sort of thing. The other thing that I think is really important is to create a sales deck, right? So basically, your sales pitch. And again, you may be at the MVP, you might not even have truly a product yet, but I think as early as possible, start to build that sales deck and practice, again, your positioning, your value proposition, how you would present it. Probably the hardest part for a founder or someone who is kind of like so deep into what they're bringing to market is how do you actually simplify that and boil it to such a level that it makes it easy for someone to make a decision, right? And so building a sales deck, going through a few iterations of that will, again, pull you through kind of that exercise and make it easier for you long-term to get folks' attention, and then to publish it into, again, the marketplace, right? To put it on your website, to have it available for download is still a great way. I don't like to hide sales pitches just behind salespeople, right? It's okay to publish those forward. So create a sales deck. The other thing that can be kind of related to this is maybe you're doing like a 90-day strategy or plan. Again, an ebook or a lead magnet can function in a very similar sort of way. So I think that is another important part to building that body of work. Then the next thing is try to work on making buying as frictionless as possible, right? And so there's some block and tackling stuff here, just starting to define that product and service, and again, creating clarity around, what are the benefits, what are the features, what makes you kind of unique and different. But then also building the actual proposal template. This is another thing that I've seen hurt a lot of early entrepreneurs is they get out there, they start talking about the product, they have something compelling, but they're really slow when a commitment's made and someone asks for a proposal, like they just sit there forever kind of going around in circles trying to figure out how to present an agreement that looks professional or a proposal that is kind of relevant to what they just said in the sales pitch. So have that ready. Don't be surprised by your first sale. So whatever that process is, that purchasing flow, go ahead and have that set up, have it thought out. And kind of one of the most powerful things is if I get a commitment on a sales call to immediately within an hour be able to turn around and deliver that proposal or an agreement, or again, some sort of presentation to help begin that purchase flow and onboarding. And then of course that's the kind of the third aspect of this is creating an onboarding process, having thought through what it is to bring on a new client and what are the steps and how are we going to go about doing that. Finally, and this one can make or break a startup for sure, is just fulfillment and retention. Again, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs are surprised by their first few sales, and they haven't really thought about delivery. And they certainly haven't thought about that experience in using the product or the service or interacting with the new company or business that you've created. So go through this. Think about service delivery. Think about product activation. Again, a lot of times maybe you're giving away the product for free or you have some sort of initial onboarding and implementation, but truly getting the customer to use the product, to actually be activated and to start to kind of realize the value of it can often be a little bit of a blind spot or a gap in that fulfillment process. So make sure that you have a process to activate and even see how much or what percentage of your new onboardings are actually activating the product and taking advantage of the features. Value building, so over time, what is it that keeps them wanting to have the product? A lot of times this is new features or moving with the market as it changes. One of the things that you want to kind of install inside of your client's mindset is, hey, I always want to be paying these folks because they're innovative and I want the next thing that they think of or the next thing that they offer, or I simply can't get these results outside of them in particular. So value building, and then of course ultimately this all rolls up to retention, the percentage of clients that you onboard, that you retain for whatever that lifetime value or that time frame is to get to lifetime value is super important, because the more that you increase lifetime value, the more you can spend on acquisition, and those things work really powerfully together. And again, later you can see I want to expand more on some of those topics, but this is precisely the plan that I have used and I would encourage anybody to use in order to get to that first 500,000 in ARR. And I will tell you, if you do these things, and of course you insert the product or service in this mix, these things themselves will create the audience and the interest in your product that you will get to that first mark. Now, what you do with that afterwards and how you scale that is significant, but most companies with just a handful of people, you can get to 500,000 ARR pretty simply by just following this game plan. So hopefully that's helped. I would encourage you, do me a favor and like and subscribe. Helps the channel grow, and of course, get you in front of the latest and greatest when we publish the next video. Look forward to seeing you on our next video, and hopefully you're starting to build that business up to that 500,000 ARR and beyond.